Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Halls of History podcast. My name is Zachary Martin, and my partner.
I'm Colin Sorensen.
And we are sorry about the delays in our podcast. Life happens sometimes. But Now we are back, and better than ever, to cover World War II. And today, the Nazi Germany.
Yes.
So, where else to start than the beginning? So, during World War I, Germany had been losing the war for quite some time. And they eventually realized that it was completely unwinnable. They were hopeless. So they decided to surrender under control of the Weimar Republic. They agreed to several deals in the treaty, including loss of land, military, money, and power in general, and the ability to gain power.
Yeah.
And the problem was, for the longest time, they've been telling their people, there's the citizens of Germany, that the war was winnable. And they believed that. They truly did believe that, because if you're told something enough, you will eventually begin to believe it. Yeah. And that's what happened to the German people. And when they surrendered, they were just furious, including Adolf Hitler.
Yes.
And everyone began to blame the Jewish society of Germany for protesting, and for the longest time, Jews had been immigrating into German society. And then post-war, in 1929, there was a large economic collapse, which Hitler used to control people, because people were angry, they were afraid, because now they were jobless, their economy was fried, the German dollar was worth next to nothing. Sorry.
And this was when Hitler started to get...
Yeah, so he used their fear as a stepping stone to get into power and to begin to push forth the Nazi regime.
Yeah.
So he controlled their fears, and Hindenburg, who was at the time the governor, or top person.
Top of the person, whatever you want to call it.
He elected Hitler to chancellor. And then there was a fire in the Parliament building, which Hindenburg was in, which burned up, and he used it to gain emergency powers, and he began to persecute communists and Jewish people who really had nothing to do with it. We still have no clue how the fire was caused, but he still believed that Hitler or a Nazi started the fire to give him more of a boost into power.
Yeah.
So then, when he gained emergency powers, he banned free speech and took over power after Hindenburg passed away.
So this is when he became that leader figure that we see in World War II of commanding everything.
Mm-hmm. He did not like free speech, because if there's free speech, it's harder to control the population.
Yeah.
And that's all Hitler wanted to do. He wanted to control power, money, wealth, glory.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so he came into power, and he was great debts in an unarmed military. So he hired a man, Heinrich Schaft. He founded Hitler's campaign, and he was the first leader in Hitler's Ministry of Economy. And he was a non-radicalist who supported private property, and he used him, who shared ideologies with the people, to gain trust and admiration of his people, who began to support, because people wanted jobs, because nobody had jobs, nobody had money. So he used this guy who had similar views and wanted people to start buying property, making money again, really just rebalance the economy.
Yeah.
So he used this guy to gain admiration of his people and really make sure that he wasn't going to be overthrown while he was building up his war economy.
War economy, you want to call it.
So at this point, he wasn't really focused on arms production or weaponry of any sorts. And then, until a man named Wien Wirtschaft, it was a military-focused war economy, which Hermann Goering, who commanded the Luftwaffe, to prepare for a war. This was the plan to essentially get Germany into conquering mode. Get ready to produce weapons, produce tanks, produce planes, and just really start cracking down on people, get them into the military, get them fighting.
This is when they wanted their power. This is the start of their beginning of the Great War.
Crusade, we'll call it.
The Crusade.
Mm-hmm. And, so they tried to get people into the military. They weren't taking money from the banks. They just really wanted money to make weapons.
Yeah.
Which is essentially, So then they created a 4-year plan to build weapons, and they stopped making cars to make more guns and more tanks, and they did that several other kinds of manufacturing. And they rationed out food. They took, like I said, money from the bank and raised taxes just so they could make more weapons, more money, just so they could keep pushing onward, because then they were going to invade Poland.
Yeah, that's the start of it.
Yep. So, and then we'll get into his conquest later on in another episode. Now we're going to get into the weapons, the tanks, the ships, the planes, what made Germany
the powerhouse of the Axis powers.
Which we believe Germany to be that powerhouse. They just conquered everything. Perfect war economy, all that stuff. What they used that war economy to make. So let's start with the basic infantry rifle, the Kar 98, also known as the Carbiner 98, also known as the Kar 98. It was a semi-automatic bolt-action rifle with an internal magazine that held 7x92 by 57 millimeter bullets. It was roughly 44 inches long and weighed about 9 pounds. It was a solid gun. I mean, there were also variants of it with a optic or scope just for longer range sniping.
Yes.
Here's a big one, the STG-44, the world's first AR or armor-light rifle. It was chambered in 7.92 by 33 millimeter rounds. It was capable of fully automatic fire, but usually will be used in semi-automatic or burst rounds, just like automatic weapons to today.
Yeah.
It was about 11 pounds and was 37 inches long. It had, if you were going fully automatic, it could reload fast enough. It could fire at 500 rounds per minute.
Which is actually pretty fast.
For its time, very high.
Yes.
Until you get to Hitler's buzzsaw, the MG42. It was chambered in 7.92 by 57 millimeter rounds and had a fire rate of 1,500 rounds per minute. It was just over 4 feet long and weighed 23 pounds. So this gun is a behemoth of a gun.
Yeah.
And it's most renowned for its usage at the Battle of Normandy.
Yeah.
And if you've seen anything about it, you just know it was a killing machine.
It was a bone saw. Mm-hmm. And it was a buzzsaw, bone saw. It shredded through, like, pretty much everything.
If you got hit by even one of those rounds, you would be better off dead.
Yeah.
Those rounds are massive, like huge bullets. And now you're firing it at a rate of 1,500 rounds per minute. That's insane. And to put this into perspective, the M4 rifle that the USA's military uses for the most part today only fires a 5.56. So you're adding a lot of mass to that bullet, which is now being fired out at several times the rate the M4 could ever dream about.
Yes.
It would fire so quickly that they would have to have extra barrels.
Because its barrel was melting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you know about guns, the primer is hit by the hammer and it explodes, which fires the bullet out. Well, 1,500 rounds per minute of explosions is inevitably going to cause heating within the barrel, and the barrel will just melt. So then they would have to replace the barrel just so they're able to keep firing.
Yes.
Which is absurd.
It's an absurd amount of... 15 rounds per minute. And how long was Normandy?
1,500 rounds per minute.
Well,
and Normandy was a several-day operation.
Yes, several-day operation. So that many bullets, you would need a lot of barrels, just a continuous fire.
Yeah. And if you watch any form of media today, you see, like, people getting shredded in half by just hordes, lines, walls of bullets, that's not an exaggeration.
That is like pretty much...
Facts.
Yeah, pretty much factual
and keep in mind, the Normandy beach was pretty big. It was a pretty large beach that people were charging up. And you're getting shot at by massive bullets at a high rate of fire. It's horrifying. And now let's get to the tanks, which Germany is known for.
Yes.
Let's start with the Tiger. The Tiger chain of tanks was used from 1942 to the war's end. It was very expensive and will cost about $1.3 million USD today, and that's matched to the inflation rate. Whereas the Panzer IV, which was the more common of the tanks, was only $500,000. So that's almost 3 times as much money.
Yes.
But this didn't mean it wasn't cost effective. There were about 500 Tiger IIs and a little under 1,400 Tiger Is. It had a 88 millimeter cannon that was often equipped with armor penetration and explosive rounds. Occasionally there was incendiary shrapnel rounds, but it wasn't common. The gun was also, as if it wasn't already formidable enough, it was also impeccable accuracy and amazing range.
Yes.
This was thanks to its TZF-9C optic. It was very high quality, and it was even used after the war in some newer tank models. And it was tested by British trials.
Yes.
Just to see why was this tank so formidable, and it fired 5 rounds at an 18 by 16-inch target, and it hit all 5 rounds at a range of 1,100 meters.
Which is insane.
Uh-huh. What do you think about that? That's 11-ish football fields away, which is... And it's hitting accurately, too.
Yeah.
On a tiny target. It also had It also had 2 MG-34 machine guns. Which were both calibered in a 7.92 rounds. And it could travel at 40 kilometers per hour or 25 miles per hour. It was extremely well armored with 4 inches on the front of the tank. And the tank was so lethal that many Allied soldiers would refer to the tank as the 88 with great fear. It outmatched pretty much any tank you would ever go against.
It was the quality, it was that tank that the U.S. military actually feared seeing.
Mm-hmm. There are several accounts of quote-unquote tiger fever, which is basically people hallucinating about seeing tigers in the distance and having panic attacks. That's how formidable it was. Just seeing it would give people panic attacks, which is absurd.
Yes.
So now let's move on to the Panzer, specifically the Panzer IV. The Panzer IV used, funny word, the Kampfwagen Kanone.
Yes.
Funny word.
Very.
And it had a barrel that was 180 centimeters long and had an 8.8 centimeter diameter barrel. It was often used with low velocity, high explosive shells, and they also had an armor piercing round called the Panzergrenadine. I don't know.
Yeah, German words in English.
They're funny, especially when it comes to weapons.
Yes.
This round will fire at 430 meters per second and it could penetrate up to 43 millimeters of armor, that's a pretty good amount of armor.
That is pretty good.
It also had, again, 2 MG-34 machine guns. Which could fire at 800 to 900 rounds per minute. It had a barrel of 24.7 inches. It fired, again, the 7.92 by 57 millimeter rounds, and it could drive at 40 kilometers per hour, 25 miles per hour. It had 30 to 20 millimeters of armor, which was pretty heavily armored for the front.
Yeah.
It had 23. It was about 23 feet long, including the barrel, and it weighed 25 tons. It was the backbone of the German army. It was produced from 1936 to 1945. So yeah, their tanks. There was more tanks.
There was more tanks, but those are the most common known. Yeah, common. Like the Tiger. The Tiger, it's that quality one. Like they only had 500 of them, and it was that quality superior one. And then the Panzer was the quantity. More
used, but still a great tank.
Yeah, still good tanks. Tanks overall are just good at their job. Mm-hmm. If you engineer them right.
Okay, now let's get into the ships. There's different kinds of ships, but today we're going to go over the U-boat Mark VIIC, and then the Bismarck destroyer, the Bismarck class destroyers.
Yes.
Which is honestly a sad story about the Bismarck, but
yes,
we'll get into that later. The U-boat was the backbone of the German Navy. Everyone knows about it. It was 220 feet long and weighed about 770 tons. It can move at about 20 miles per hour on the surface and 9 miles per hour submerged, with a range of about 9,800 miles of range before it had to refuel, and which was slightly less than most other U-boats in their variants, but it was often used at about 200 feet of depth and could go about 800 meters. 800 feet before it would be crushed by the pressure, which is really good.
Yeah.
It had a total of about 5 torpedo tubes, which was one on the back. And it fired G7A torpedoes with... So yeah, these torpedoes were 533.4 millimeters long, which is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Think about it. 10 millimeters to a centimeter. 100 centimeter?
100...
It's a big number. It comes out to a big number.
Yes.
It's big. I'm American. I use freedom units.
Yes.
But that's still a big number.
Like, this room that we're in, I don't know how long it is. But I don't know if
it would be, it's a big missile.
Yeah.
8 big missile, 8 big go boom.
Yeah.
There's some orc logic for you.
Yes.
Okay. So, it was, yeah. So they also had an 8x8. They also had 8x8 centimeter AA cannon, which is anti-aircraft.
Yes.
Cannons on top with 200 rounds of ammunition. The caliber was a 13-kilogram round.
Which...
probably flak, but I couldn't find any information on that. But I'm assuming it's flak. And flak, for those of you who don't know, it basically fires essentially a rocket up into the air, and once it reaches a certain altitude, it explodes into shrapnel.
Wait, it's basically kind of like a mini cluster.
It's a rocket, essentially.
Yeah,
it's a rocket, but explodes into more shrapnel.
Yeah.
All right. The Bismarck, like we said, they made 2 Bismarck class ships, but they were both very short-lived because they were just too big to be effective.
Yes.
Planes, boy.
There's a lot.
So, overall, it's the Messerschmitt Bf 109, but there have been many variations over the years, including the Bf 109A, the Bf 109B, the Bf 109C, the Bf 109D, the Bf 109E1, the Bf 109E2, the Bf 109E3, Bf 109E4, Bf 109E5, Bf 109E7, Bf 109F1, Bf 109F2, Bf 109F3, Bf 109F4, Bf 109F5, Bf 109G1, Bf 109G2, Bf 109G3, the Bf 109G4, Bf 109G5, and finally, the one we'll be looking at today, the Bf 109G6.
Mouthful.
Holy ship.
Yes. Exactly. A lot of variants of one plane.
Which is same for most, but
yes,
this one
just had...
It's because they would turn small modifications into a whole new variant.
Oh, yeah.
Which, yeah. They were, again, with the German, high quality.
Yes.
So the Bf 109G6, one man flew this plane. It was about 8.95 meters long and had a 9.925 meter wingspan. It weighed about 3,148 kilograms, or about 3.47 tons unloaded. Depending on the altitude, speed varied from 503 kilometers per hour to 642 kilometers per hour. It was armed with 2 synchronized MG 131 guns on each side, or an engine-mounted 20 millimeter, or another MG. They like their MGs.
They do. They do.
If it can hold an MG, they're putting an MG on it.
Probably.
And that's essentially their motto.
Yeah.
We like machine gun. And machine gun go, but...
Yes.
Okay, so yeah. It also could have a 2 WFR-GR-21 bombs and could also have a 1,250 kilogram bomb or 1 250 kilogram bomb or 4 50 kilogram bombs. It was highly maneuverable at low altitude dogfights, but was outpaced towards the end of the war because their quality began to go downhill.
Yes.
Because they realized we're running out of ships. We're running out of planes. We need more. But you know what? They didn't need more. They needed more quality. But Hitler was a little bit dumb sometimes.
Sometimes he said, we just need more quality instead of quantity.
Oh, I'm going to go on a tangent real quick. Hitler was... YouTube, don't take me down. Hitler was a genius.
Yes.
He was a strategic genius, beautiful public speaker, knew how to get control of his people, but his strategies sometimes just weren't it.
No.
They just weren't it. And this is one of them. they started mass producing them, and the quality went way down. People didn't want to work. Want to know why? Because they had no food to work for.
Yeah.
Because the economy, he fixed it, but it still wasn't very good. Because they couldn't spend their money. That's how Hitler made the economy. They couldn't spend their money because he wanted to take their money when they put it into a bank. So that's what he did. So then he started making more planes. But mass production is almost never good. Quality over quantity? Yeah, definitely. For this situation, you definitely want a lot more quality over quantity. Because that's part of the reason he lost. He really got clapped
by quality things.
Yeah, because America, they started making higher quality planes. Russia, higher quality planes. Everywhere else was advancing while he was just mass producing them, which didn't work out in his favor, as we know in the history books.
Yes.
Oh, so back to it. The plane was very heavily armed, and it made it formidable to even the Allied planes, which were definitely a lot more highly armored, but at the beginning of the war, they were still getting fairly destroyed.
Yes.
But for the most part though, it's the pilot, not the plane. And Germany had a lot of experienced pilots, but everyone becomes experienced in a war eventually.
Eventually they will.
You either die or you become experienced. That's how war works. And eventually everyone was experienced, and really their planes went downhill. So they were at a disadvantage. They could have won, but everybody got better.
Yeah.
And Germany lost the advantage. But in the beginning, the Luftwaffe pilots were just a lot better because they had better training systems, and overall they were just better. But since, like I said, Soviet American pilots, they had similar skill by the end. But that wasn't the only plane, because there was the Stuka, which we'll get into when we go over the Blitzkrieg, which is, everyone's heard of it. It was a beautiful strategy. It involved speed and power. Germany did not have the resources to properly fund a long war, so they developed the Blitzkrieg. The front line would be made up of tanks and other armored vehicles. They would drive up and through the enemy line, using their tanks to create a border for a supply line to keep resources flowing in. Then another division would also then do the same on the other side. Then they would converge at the top, separating the major force into 3 smaller ones, which they could then kill the smaller group and then press outwards, because they would have been...
Yes.
Everyone would be in disarray because they were used to World War I, where it was trench warfare, and they would just sit in trenches and shoot at each other until one of them balled up.
Yeah.
Which didn't happen here. So they were caught off guard, and then...
The strategy was basically just kill box, trap them in, and then disperse out, do the same thing. Encircle, kill, expand. Yes.
And it worked. That's how they conquered France. That's how they conquered Poland. Everywhere. They just shredded through because of this super powerful strategy. They would just whittle down the enemy over and over and over until they surrendered or died. Then they would reform the line and do it again. The tactic was so effective due to surprise and shock factors. The main force would also be backed by infantry as well as the Junkers Ju-87, or the Stuka. This plane, oh my god, beautiful. Beautiful plane.
Beautiful.
It could dive at an 80-degree angle, so almost essentially straight down. It came out, it has a propeller. So no plane would be able to do this, because the propeller, if they were to drop the bomb, it would hit the propeller.
Yeah.
Well, they would dive, and they would have a latch that would proceed to fall down, holding the bomb, and throw it down past the propeller. So it wouldn't hit the propeller, and it could drop 5 bombs, and dude, it just shredded.
It's basically just a little, the bombs are attached to it, and as it's going down that 80 degree, this little lever pops out, and it goes joof, and it just kind of launches it out.
Yep. It was a beautifully designed plane. It was so nice. So anyway, that concludes our episode on what we have. Come back next week for more episodes. Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more content, and we'll see you in the next one.